Hey everyone, welcome to another episode here
What
at Too Real. I'm your host, Mike Rosado, along with my lovely bride, Jillian Rosado.
What up?
AKA Miss Rosado if you're nasty.
I can't.
You remember that whole Janet Jackson thing? Like,
Yes.
it's Miss Jackson if you're nasty.
Yes, I
That's the
remember
reference.
that.
I
Yeah.
just didn't want you to think I was being weird.
No, I know the reference.
It was a
Clearly.
pop culture reference,
Oh my
daggone it.
goodness, you're showing your age, Mr. Rosado.
I am.
Yo, but like recently, a couple months ago, we watched that Janet Jackson documentary.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I feel like we forget about her a lot.
We do.
Because then we put on this like Janet Jackson Spotify playlist, and I was like, there's so many bangers here.
Yeah, there
like,
are.
why did I forget about Janet Jackson?
know.
The whole album, I forget what the name is. It
Rhythm Nation?
no, the one with If and all that. What album is that?
Oh, yeah, that's the one with her, the inappropriate
She's like,
cover.
yeah, she's topless
Yeah.
on the cover. But that album is like amazing.
Yeah, it is
and I
really
totally
good.
forgot about it.
Yeah.
So if you forgot about Janet Jackson also, turn it on.
That's right.
That's the way love goes.
Right. Because it will relieve, it's a good stress reliever.
Oh
Bang.
my goodness. Do you see what he does here? Every time. Like, just layer on the cheese, bro. Layer it on.
But that's a great transition. Can I just get a little bit of credit for mastering the art of corny transitions?
Of corny transitions, yes, I'll
Yes.
give you that one.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Today, I want to talk about the difference between stress and anxiety. And again, for the theme of Too Real, we like to keep it real. And recently, I know for me personally, has some stress going on right now. You know,
Yeah.
most of the listeners know, I'm a pastor. My wife and I, we lead this church called Fervent Church in South Jersey. Dealing with some drama recently, also starting up a construction project in our second location. So there's a lot of stress.
Yes.
Your boy's dealing with some stress.
Yes.
And some of it, and I'm actually cool. I would consider myself cool under pressure. Like I enjoy being, I like the pressure.
Yes.
Whereas some people don't like the pressure, but I actually do, dig it and actually thrive on it. Like,
Yeah.
I use it as fuel
Same.
sometime.
Yeah.
But I don't deal with anxiety, but you do. You
Yes.
struggle sometimes with
And like not
anxiety.
diagnosed anxiety,
Right,
but like
yeah. I feel like we have to throw in the disclaimer that we're not,
No, and we're
clinical
not
therapists.
Yes, exactly. But I feel like anxiety is almost like a buzzword lately. But I feel like just through twists and turns of lives and pandemics and stuff like that, it just brought all these issues to the surface that we didn't necessarily know were there before. Me personally, I just thought this was the way I was. Like I didn't think anything of it. My anxiety came. I had more awareness of it once we got married, because I would do things and he'd be like, why are you doing that?
Right.
And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I just do this. And he's like, and he would just start like, hey, I play with my nails sometimes when I'm anxious and stuff like that. So little things that would pop
She
up.
blinks.
Yes, I blink a
Like
lot.
50,000
No,
times.
but like, I don't blink a lot when I'm anxious. I blink a lot when I'm thinking a lot.
True, but usually
like,
you're
processing.
thinking because of anxiety.
True. And then just experience with family members with anxiety and through their diagnosis and processes. Like I've just been sitting there like, ooh, I do that too.
Yeah.
Ooh, I struggle there too. Ooh, yeah, like that looks familiar. So yeah, I'm not diagnosed with anxiety, but there are things within my life which point in that direction. So
For this episode, I'm going to represent for this time just stress.
yes.
And I want you to represent anxiety.
I am not only the president, I'm also a client.
That's right. So as we talk this out, and again, not necessarily like, we're not talking about the clinical version of these things, but just the day-to-day stuff, day-to-day
Yeah.
stress, day-to-day anxiety. Because unfortunately, I think, and even though I'm not a clinical counselor, I'm not a clinical therapist, but, I do biblical counseling in my arena. The point I really want to make in this episode is that there is a difference between stress and anxiety.
Yeah, because when we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, you were like, what's the difference between stress and anxiety? I'm like, is there one? Because sometimes they feel like the same thing.
Right. And for me, like,
Or does one
unfortunately-
cause the other? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, sometimes in our dialogue, sometimes I'll ask you a question that I already know the answer because I just want
Do
to see.
you? I had no idea.
I just want to see how you're processing certain things.
Uh-huh.
And I think unfortunately, I've watched other people even around us recently that are wearing some of the stuff that we're wearing interchange inappropriately the terms stress and anxiety. And the way I would describe it, and we could do a deeper dive in this, but I just want to keep it not surface level, but not so deep that we lose all of our audience. But like, I would say stress is a result of pressure that it's external.
Okay.
Right? It's external stuff that causes stress. Where, and also I would say stress is also short term. So think internal and short term. Whereas external and short term. Anxiety is internal and could be permanent, ongoing. I should say ongoing, not permanent, because I believe in that you could have freedom, girl. I believe it.
Yes.
But yeah, it could be ongoing. And so that's the difference with it. Stress is just a normal response to threat or demands in our lives. The pressure of certain things happening, deadlines, difficult conversations.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of those recently, challenging situations. That's under the umbrella of stress, where anxiety is more of that persistent feeling of fear, internal feeling of fear, internal feeling of worry, internal worry about the future and situations and those kind of things. And so I want to talk to you real quick. And what are some ways that you failed to cope with your anxiety?
We only have 24 minutes. Ignoring it, acting like everything's fine. The biggest thing for me, and I know you're thinking where we failed, but like also like here's ways that I've learned to cope, because I think doing nothing is obviously the easiest way to fail at it. For me, taking care of myself is the easiest way to cope with that. Because when you're taking care of yourself, you're operating at a different level. You're able to, I feel like anxiety spurs from stress at times. So when my life seems really stressful is when my anxiety seems to increase. So there could be external things going on that trigger internal. And when I'm not taking care of myself on top of that, then I'm a hot mess. If I'm not sleeping well, if I'm not eating well, if I'm not exercising has been the biggest thing for me in my mental health. And I'm sure you've noticed it as well. When I go on like little breaks from working out, I'm another person. But like my mental health is overwhelmingly better when I work out, because you're getting that release. You're focused on something other than the thoughts in your head at the time. I've done a lot of meditation lately, not perfect at it, but it's been, for me, it's because of my anxiety and I have these swirling thoughts at times. It's hard for me to meditate because I'll be like, okay, I'm just focusing on the words that this person is saying. And then I'm like, but I'm thinking about this. And it's very hard for me to quiet the voice in my head. So it's something that the perfectionist in me, which we'll get into in later episodes, I get upset when I meditate because I can't focus a lot of the time. But then I'm like, you just need to keep trying. You need to keep trying. And I think when I am able to, I had a really good meditation practice a couple weeks ago that I had told you about. And it really did help. So it showed me that I can get there. But yeah, just taking care of myself is really the way that I've learned to cope. Having awareness of the fact that like, okay, this might not actually be reality, the thoughts that are spinning in my head, because a lot of times when you have anxiety, you're going to worst case scenario. And just having awareness and able to like have a thought, hold it, and then dissect it instead of just railroading through every scenario in the world.
Yeah. So, but
did I answer your question?
Yeah, you
okay.
did. You gave me one way you don't cope with it and one way you do, all in the same, about taking care of yourself primarily. And I think that's great. And I think being preemptive is helpful. Like knowing that you have that you lean that way. You know, and being aware of that is key. I think it's actually the same thing with stress. With stress, like I need to know that, problems are going to come. Situations are going to come. So to get ahead of it and stay ahead of it, not in a fear-based way, though. I watch people try to safeguard their lives too much from stress, and they drive themselves crazy, and then that becomes a stressor.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like your answer for stress can't be more stress. You know?
Yeah.
So you got to be cautious with that, but to be preemptive and to, I think, taking care of yourself, even on the stress side, is a good way to cope with it, because I know there are times where when I'm stressed, this is how I respond to it. Things are out of control externally, right? I couldn't help, misinformation coming this way. I can't help delays coming this way. Like, it's not my fault, right? But in that, there are some times when I'm stressed out, I just want to control something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So even sometimes the control even comes in the form of rebellion. Forget that. Screw that. I'm eating that whole entire pizza today. Right? Or forget
you are
that.
A stress eater and an emotional eater.
But it's not because of the food. It's because of the sense of like, I'm going to control this right now. And it's going to feel good in the moment to control it.
Yeah.
But then it's a vicious cycle, because you can't fight stress with stress.
Yeah.
Then now I'm stressed out that, like, man, I just ate all those calories.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hate myself later.
Yeah.
And then that becomes stress, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't recognize that just taking care of yourself with anxiety or stress helps us to prepare ourselves for those moments better. And it's stupid. It's just dumb. I think I've heard one preacher say that anxiety reveals our idolatry of comfort and control.
Yeah.
And actually, I would say the same thing with stress. It reveals that. But
can I add something to? Here we go. Too real. Recently, in the last couple weeks, there was a scenario going on that was causing me a lot of stress and sent me straight into like a level of anxiety that I never experienced before, and like had a full blown anxiety attack. And that was scary for me, because I'm like, I can normally like snap myself, or say to you, hey, like this, I'm thinking, can I just like word vomit this to you? And it was just, the stress was overwhelming, and that really triggered the anxiety. And then physically I reacted to it, and that was crazy. And I think the reason it got to the point it did is because I felt like I was in this cycle of chaos.
Yeah.
I couldn't see a way out of it. And you were stressed at the same time. So normally I would come to you and be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Like, can we process this out? Da, da, da. But like, I felt like I didn't have that. And then I guess I just like internally combusted. And it was crazy. So like, self-care is important, but also like when you recognize those moments, if you have someone that you can go to and you can just be like, hey, I'm going to say some stuff. It might not make sense. It might sound a little crazy, but I just need to like get it out and be able to just, and I don't need you to fix it, and I don't need you to give me solutions. I just need to let it out. And that's really helpful sometimes as well.
Yeah. It is very helpful to have somebody to go to, have some kind of support system.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. So taking care of yourself, and then that second layer of having a support system, whether it's anxiety or stress.
Yeah. Because if not, like for me, I'll shut down.
Yeah.
I'll withdraw. I'll isolate. Like there was a couple weeks I wasn't posting anything on Instagram, and I had so many people reach out to me like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And that, because I just completely isolated myself, and that doesn't help either. So even if you have that one person you can go to them. Don't just like lock yourself in a room, figuratively or realistically. Because that can really like make that spiral go down even further.
Right. So while we're there, let's talk about this. I was planning on talking about this a little later, but so let's just say that there's some listeners today that are listening, and they're in relationships where the other person deals with something opposite of them. So like you and I, you deal more with anxiety. I deal with more with stress. Can you, without putting our marriage on blast too hard, how is
it's too real, baby. Let's go.
How has that affected us? And you can be honest. I'm giving you the liberty to be honest.
Can I have time to think? Can you go first?
Yeah.
And I'm not. You can say whatever. I'm not giving you any like parameters on what you can share in this.
Okay. I think because of your work, sometimes because of your anxiety about the well-being of our marriage, right? It's just an ongoing thing. Like you want me to be happy, you want me to be fulfilled, those kind of things, and that's ongoing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's not like an event. That's our way. When when I'm dealing with a specific event that's lasts longer than a week or so, like you start worrying. You'll see it as okay, this is now gone from an event to a pattern, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it does become a pattern. So
yeah,
I'll give you that.
Okay,
for sure. I don't want to argue live on camera. It does turn into.
Are you feeling anxious right now?
No, I'm not. Are you?
No, actually.
Sometimes it does turn into a pattern, but a lot of times it's an event, right? Mm-hmm. So I think your anxiety and my stress bump heads when it's just like you're like, yo, I can't live like this for the rest of my life, and I'm like, dude, I just trying to get past this event right now. I'm not even thinking about the rest of my life.
Yeah,
but that's where the difference is. Your anxiety, you're thinking about our whole lives.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm not thinking about that already. I just want to like get rid of this thing that's causing me the stress. Where you're going, yo, this is going to be forever, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, because here's the catch. When you're stressed out, a lot of times you shut down and you get really silent and you inwardly process.
Yes.
And that like totally pokes at my anxiety because I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? Was he thinking? Is everything okay? And silence for me is like, it's debilitating at times when people are silent because I'm like, just say something. Like, what's going on? You know?
Because so on top of our anxiety and stress,
dilemma, you're an internal processor. I'm an external processor. So there are times where I'm externally processing, and if you're stressed out and you're like, I'm not making any decisions, I'm like, I'm not either. I'm just literally like going through, I'm just processing out loud everything that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So it's taken time for us to like navigate that and figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to, in that instance, to remind ourselves that like, hey, I'm not isolating you. Like, I'm not isolating myself away from you.
Yeah.
I am internally processing. And then we've learned that, let me make a promise. Hey, once I feel like I have a complete thought, I'll let you in.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that has.
It's helped a little. Yeah.
And again, you come up to me and you go, I'm just going to verbally process, but we're not making decisions.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm just like, dude, like this is not the time to make decisions. But when you come
I'm going through every scenario I can think of. So like the car's having issues.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we getting a new car? Do we get a new car? Or do we get this fixed, or do we just like let it sit and da-da-da?
Right.
And he's like,
yo,
what do you mean we're not? And I'm like, no, I'm not making decisions. I'm just like thinking of all the options we have here,
right,
so that we can like talk about it together.
Right.
Something that you, I want to go back for a second. You asked me, am I getting anxious as you're talking about this? And I'm not. And this is something strange because I've been asked this before about this podcast. Someone said to me, it's very refreshing how honest you are and how vulnerable you are. And for me, just putting it out there relieves anxiety. Like, I have nothing to hide. This is who I am. This is how I struggle. And almost like it's like naming it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And that reduces anxiety for me. And I think in the moments where I can't name it, because I haven't figured it out yet, or I don't feel safe to name it, which is very, like, I'm the first one to throw myself under the bus. Self-deprecation is like my favorite tool. But yeah, naming it and just like calling it what it is it takes that power away from the anxiety for me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, totally. And that's funny because I just had this epiphany. So that takes away your anxiety, whereas remember, stress is external. So you taking what's internal, bringing it external.
Stresses you out?
No. Well, yes, actually. Because if we're dealing with the same issue, right? You're more anxious about it. I'm more stressed out about it. You want to take it external because then it relieves the internal battle inside of you.
Yeah.
Where me, I'm trying to get a break from the external. So you want to bring it to light.
Yeah.
And I just want to like, yo, can I just take a break from dealing with this? And that's where we bump heads.
So what you're saying is we're doomed.
No, we're not doomed. I think the first two things that we laid out are key, like to be preemptive. You're going to have things you're going to be anxious about. You're going to have things that are going to stress you out. Be proactive, be prepared. Second thing is to have that support system. And so, you and I, because you're because you're external processor and I'm an internal processor, we need to understand each other's modes and be completely confident and comfortable with we're not the right people to process this right now. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We could come back when it's a little more like 90% resolved or something like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes like we bump heads when we're trying to, you're trying to externalize it.
I'm like, I want to talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I'm trying to internalize it. And sometimes we have unnecessary arguments.
Yeah.
Because both our mechanisms are competing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And just to be aware of that and mature and just go, hey, you're not my savior. I'm not your savior. Let's go to God, go to people, you know what I mean? And deal with it that way. But then still come back to each other. We're not separating in this, but there are moments where we just need to like go to your corner, go to my corner, figure some things out. Yeah. And then come back to, tie a bow on it. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's a great guy that we met, I want to say a few months ago. He did a seminar called Steve Cuss. He has a book called Managing Leadership Anxiety. Phenomenal guy. Yes. Phenomenal process on how to handle anxiety.
I felt so seen. I was like, somebody finally gets me.
And I'll be honest with you, when I went to the event, we were hosting the event with our district, and I was like, I don't need this crap. This is.
He's like, I don't struggle with anxiety like you.
But then I sat down. I'm like, oh, dude, maybe I do a little bit. But he said this thing that I wrote down that I won't forget. He says anxiety displaces our awareness of God, and I'm not saying you have to believe in God.
Or you could even say of the bigger picture,
right? Of the
universe, of whatever.
Our awareness of the truth, right? And so, I think that's the case with anxiety and stress. It displaces it. You're not focused on what's truth. You're not focused on what's strong. You're not focused on what's reality. So, to just take a beat and again, be proactive, have that support system. And if you're in a relationship that, you deal with things differently, just to be aware of it. Yeah. And again, let's pre-navigate it right now. Knock on wood. There's nothing heavily stressful. I think some of that stuff is behind us a little bit. I know there's more coming.
Yeah. I can always think of something.
I know you can. That's your anxiety. For me, I'm like, okay, we good now? We good? Yeah, we good for a little bit. We good for a little bit. And I'll keep it. We are good for a little bit. But to basically understand how it works out and how are we going to work it out in the future when it comes up. So one last question.
Okay.
So
this one isn't on the list.
I know.
I'm anxious.
You're anxious. What are some ways I want to create this space where I could serve you in this, right? So what's something that you haven't told me yet in regards to your anxiety that I could better serve you when you are feeling anxious?
I think the fact that you have the awareness of it is helpful. You see the little things that you've learned me enough that you see little things that I do that you're like, oh, she's feeling a little anxious right now. Yeah. And sometimes you want to fix it.
Yes.
And sometimes it's something that's like intangible that can't be fixed. But for me, sometimes just like giving me a hug or just like even like a little like squeeze on my arm or something like that physical part is helpful. Yeah. It's almost like, when dogs are anxious and they give them those thunder vests, just like put me like in a restraint hold. Put me in a thunder vest.
Fair enough.
But sometimes that comfort is helpful.
Which is weird because you're not a hugger.
No, but like we go. The problem with Mike is when we got married, I was like, these are my love languages. I took the tests. And so he's stuck to those 3.
God forbid.
For 8 years now. Listen. But like there's some times where I'll go to him and be like, I like really need physical touch. And he's like, yeah. And then he ignores it and he's like, but you said these were the 3. And I was like, Mike, I'm all of them. I'm all of the love languages.
All 5.
All of them. Just do it all.
Right. Because initially it was words of affirmation and acts of service. Those are your 2 top 2.
Yeah. And quality time's like a close third. Yeah. But yeah, sometimes just that like physical touch, like you can't fix it. I know you can't fix it. The achiever in you wants to fix it though. Yes. But sometimes all I just need to know is that like you're there to comfort me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to ask me the same question?
No, because I know you. You shut down, you stress eat, you take a nap, and then you're like, all right, I'm done. Let's go.
And then I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready to take on the role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But
That's really healthy, by the way.
no, it's not healthy.
I know. I'm being sarcastic.
But here's what I say. Here's what is healthy.
Okay. Okay. Mike, how can I serve you best when you're stressed out?
To give me a period to internalize without interference, but help me, because I know my period can turn into my period. I know my period can turn into a season, right? So give me help me stay accountable to my expiration date, right?
Yeah.
So or an expiration time frame of we talked about this when I'm angry. Just give me 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? To internalize it, figure things out, figure out what I want to say, because I don't want to say anything out of anger, right? But when it goes 30, 40 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, that's where I'm telling you right now, that's where it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
But just give me a beat, but then help me get out of that beat.
Yeah. And I feel like we kind of did that this morning, actually. We've been in this season where it just felt like things were really out of control and it was really stressful and da-da-da. And I said to you in the car, like, okay, this season's over. Like, how are we moving forward?
Yeah.
Because we can't live here.
Yeah. And that was great.
So,
and then, I didn't bucket that at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I need.
Yep.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Awesome.
All right, guys. So that was a little conversation on stress and anxiety. We would love to hear your feedback on it. If you don't agree at all, tell us. Let's talk about it.
Right.
We're going to, in an upcoming episode, we're also going to do a Q&A from you guys. We want to hear your questions and we'll answer everything and anything because this is too real. So you can always drop those in the show comments or check our Instagram stories. We'll be posting a box over there with that. At Mike Rosato, at Jillian Rosato, on TikTok, at Mike Rosato, at Jillian.Rosato. And be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can see our smiling faces. We're waving. We're smiling. And then you can check us out Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all the things. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a follow, and we will be back next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Too real.
Right here.
Bye.
Peace.